Well guys, we're reaching the end of Rick and Morty Season 4, and it's all led up to this. Over the course of 9 episodes, Rick and Morty have been at odds, confronted the forces of metacanon wish fulfillment, and just tried to cruise through the multiverse on classic Rick and Morty adventures like the good old days. But unfortunately, Rick can't escape consequences. He can't escape change, and he can't escape that there are expectations set in place. Much like the team behind Rick and Morty couldn't escape that their show is bigger than ever, and the aftermath that followed. So, with the end of Rick and Morty Season 4, Rick is forced to deal with his greatest struggle yet, family therapy. But this episode will have so much more. You should be excited, very excited, because all signs are pointing to this being an insane episode of Rick and Morty that will finally put this entire season into perspective. So without further ado, let's break down the promo. Beth mentions that Dr. Wong had a cancellation proposing a family therapy session. For those who don't remember, Dr. Wong is the therapist from the infamous episode Pickle Rick, who held a session with the Smith family, minus Jerry, that motivated Rick to transform himself into a pickle in the first place, all to avoid the therapy session. This is because, in Rick's own words, he doesn't respect therapy, much like how he claimed he doesn't respect time travel earlier this season in the Vat of Acid episode, which happened to feature Rick referencing, you guessed it, Pickle Rick.
Was it worse than when I was a pickle? Oh, that's right, you weren't there for that. Turns out kind of cool. Maybe there's a connection there.
According to Rick, therapy is for boring people, so of course he doesn't need it. But Dr. Wong left him without any retort after calling Rick out, explaining that yes, therapy is boring, but it's boring in a way where there's no risk, no adventure, you can't die from therapy. Therapy is boring because it's about putting in work, and some people would rather die than put in the work. Rick would rather die than put in the work to better himself. He would rather change those around him into becoming cynical assholes so he doesn't have to improve himself, something that's been working well with Morty. But this episode may have that backfire on Rick tremendously. I know a lot of people detested Pickle Rick and Dr. Wong in particular, but that's why it makes perfect sense to have her return. Look, life's not fair. Maybe it's not fair your least favorite character is back in the spotlight, but too bad. If you want everything else this episode has to offer, you may have to endure someone you don't necessarily care for. And trust me, this episode is already indicated to be huge for reasons we'll break down. But speaking of Morty, the highs and lows he's endured with Rick have absolutely left a bad taste in his mouth. And there's a reason that those keeping tabs on character development and theories point out how he's been butting heads with Rick this entire season. It immediately comes into play here as Rick once again tries to bullshit his way out of therapy, claiming to disintegrate. Morty calls his bluff immediately, figuring out the exact device Rick is using without any effort at all. A mini invisibility belt, if you were wondering. Old school sci-fi, love to see it. Adding insult to injury, Morty then proceeds to berate Rick with, "Why should I let you use it? You never let me use it," which is a terrifyingly bold statement for Morty on account of the fact it's assumably Rick's invention. Now perhaps this was something Morty thought of and Rick invented, or Morty helped out in the lab, so there's some hypothetical stake on his end. But as it's presented, Morty has an entitlement to use Rick's inventions. And that's definitely not unjustified considering everything Rick puts Morty through. Yeah, he should have the right to fuck around with science. But Rick is just going to see it as Morty being spoiled, because Rick doesn't care to recognize his own toxic behavior, and that's why he's afraid of therapy. In fact, this promo ends with Summer being granted the belt just to piss off Morty. Also, the entire time, Jerry is making a sock puppet, which is weird because he's going to have a lot of leverage if they go into therapy. The therapy session in Pickle Rick was centered around the aftermath of the divorce, a huge decision Rick greatly influenced. Because of the nature of the session, Jerry was absent, but now he's going to be present and accounted for. Oh joy. He's going to have a voice in this therapy session, which he'll likely greatly use to penalize Rick. Penalize probably isn't the right word considering therapy is meant to help, but Rick is just going to oppose it all anyways. Considering Dr. Wong's previous encounter with Rick, the fact Jerry would obviously be vocal about how he doesn't want Rick around and hasn't for years, and Rick's general attitude with therapy, Sanchez would definitely be on the ropes, pinned against the wall with no room to breathe. And Rick's anchor, the person who was in his corner time and time again, is Morty, except for the Rick Shank redemption, but things shook out in a way where Morty silently gave Rick another chance. However, it seems Morty would not have Rick's back at all at this point. I mean, an environment where Morty can just talk about his problems and vent without consequence? What else does he have to yell about aside from the many problems Rick has given him? Morty's physical safety really hasn't been in danger because we know in any situation, death isn't even an obstacle for this family. It's all been about Morty's mental health, something Rick firmly believes doesn't matter. However, what Rick didn't consider was that this would turn Morty against him. I mean, where does Morty begin? The heist to steal his enthusiasm for the genre? Or how about Morty asking for a dragon and instead receiving a soul-bonding fuck buddy for Rick? That's the weirdest thing I've ever said out loud. Or Rick decking him in the face to close out a time travel story. Maybe he can go for the entire Vat of Acid incident, in which Rick tricked Morty into going through hell just to spite him for calling the Vat a dumb idea. More than ever, forever. Rick has been beating down Morty, and it's no coincidence that things began ramping up once Rick was knocked down a peg by his own family. How does Rick think Beth and Jerry are going to react to learning about these things? Sure, he can throw the death crystals back at Morty, or Gluty at Morty and Jerry. Of course, there's faults all around for the events of Primordius and chilled Rick of Mort, and I'm sure if they actually do go to therapy, everyone may leave feeling a little bit bad. But Rick already struck out once. He has more on the line than anyone else. Film Theory had an amazing episode a few months back on how season 4 would conclude with Rick being kicked out by the Smith family. And considering that's a conclusion we're arriving to, just by looking at the story this season has been telling through episodic adventures, it may come to reality. That's why the last episode was so important. We were reminded that these characters are capable of sticking up to Rick. And with Primordius, I think Summer being left behind momentarily is going to help her become a little less detached from just blindly loving her grandpa. But this therapy session may likely only be a small part of the episode. Let us remind you of the title, Star Wars Return of the Jerry. Again, all the episode titles this season have correlated to their premise, so why does this promo give us nothing Star Wars Return of the Jedi related? Because this episode is a big deal. The only other promo to really have the same energy as this one was the promo for the Ricklantis mix-up, Tales from the Citadel, which only advertised the opening scene of Rick and Morty embarking on their fishing trip. But at this point in time, we knew this episode was going to be big because the Tales from the Citadel subtitle wasn't just a subtitle, it was the original episode title surfacing online and on TV guides. Assumably, once Adult Swim and the Rick and Morty team caught this, they scrambled to change the title to the Ricklantis mix-up on every platform, but the damage was already done for a handful of fans. This episode seems to be following the same route for its marketing, giving us a vague opening scene that doesn't really tell us the direction this episode will go in, unlike literally every other individual episode promo for this season, and that to us seems like some serious shit is about to go down, at least in some capacity, that they can't show in any of this season's promotional material, because all the stuff we've seen in the trailers, they've all aired already. This is the only episode we've seen nothing from and know nothing about. Again, we know what the Never Rick and Morty did, and we don't really care. There's no reason to believe that this episode definitively shut down the Galactic Federation or Evil Morty storylines. If anything, all that episode taught us is that we could never fully see what's coming next, which means everything's up in the air anyways. There's also Cassie Steele, shout out to Degrassi, who's the voice of Tammy. Ever since Tammy disappeared into the shadows, a new character, Trisha, was introduced, voiced again by Steele. Here's the thing, it's easy for Rick and Morty to get cameos, but typically in animation, when a voice actor appears frequently in a season, they probably have a contract as a recurring character. Trisha has appeared 3 times this season, and Tammy has appeared once in Never Rick and Morty's trolley plot sequence. If you sign on a voice actor for more than just a guest appearance, there's a chance you want the actor to have a significant moment, which hasn't happened yet. But I don't know, there's a possibility that maybe, just maybe, she has a big Tammy moment coming up. Trisha does want to fuck Jerry, and that's still uncomfortable to bring up every time, but this could tie in. Although at the same time, the Rick and Morty crew has stated they love working with Cassie Steele, so that's all there could be to it, plain and simple, but it's fun to look into. Regardless of all of this, the fact that we know nothing but the title, the premise is being hidden from us in promos, and Never Rick and Morty's surge of plot hooks being written off as potentially canon, remember, Rick said those things could be canon, everything is pointing to a massive season finale that'll satisfy fans all around. Unless people out there were really validated by Never Rick and Morty and just hate those plot points for whatever reason, I don't know, to each their own. Definitely get hyped though. As you know, we'll be making content for your consumption after the finale. It's sad to see another Rick and Morty season come to a close, but I really feel like season 4 has been a return to form as well as a progression of the series in a lot of ways, and I cannot wait for this finale to see how they tie everything up. But as always, I want to know what you guys' thoughts are. Are you excited for the finale? Do you think this promo makes sense? Let us know in those comments down below or tweet to us at Roundtable Vids or me at @Nemo. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the Roundtable for more incredible cartoon content. Guys, I'm Nemo, this is a Rick and Morty breakdown, and I will see you next time. Peace.